Hello, everyone, and welcome to Social Justice Forums. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. We bring you a forum discussing providing the deeper issues and the inequities that people face. We present multiple points of view, and then we also promote civic engagement. We encourage you to stay tuned because the Social Justice Forums begins now. And welcome back. Cure Violence is a global not-for-profit organization aiming to reduce the spread of violence globally through a rigorous, scientific, and data-driven approach. The organization is guided by the understanding that violence is a health issue. Individuals and communities can transform themselves, and community partners and strategic partnerships are the keys to success. We sat down with the CEO of Cure Violence Global, Dr. Fredrick Echols, to discuss more. Fredrick, thank you so much for being with us. And as we talk about gun violence, of course, a lot of attention is placed on mass shootings. But the reality is, across America, we've got more and more shootings that aren't of mass proportion that we really have to deal with.
You're absolutely right. So unfortunately, a lot of the issues related to gun violence are focused on a few particular incidents. For example, you think about the type of media coverage that mass shootings get. It's disproportionate to the coverage that we get for shootings that happen on a daily basis. But when you really look at the details, mass shootings occur in most vulnerable communities on a daily basis. So you have these shootings, and it's become a part of the norm. And so oftentimes media doesn't cover that as much as they'll cover some of the special mass shootings that occur. For example, the shooting that occurred in Uvalde, Texas, as well as Highland Park in Illinois. Those are special situations, but again, when we look at the reality, we know that mass shootings are occurring in some of our most vulnerable communities on a daily basis.
When we talk about mass shootings involved on a daily basis, a lot of people pay attention and find out that these are really sometimes inter-community struggles within the community, gang violence. We do have these random acts of shooting, but the truth is there's a lot of gang violence out there, and a lot of this happens within sometimes a 20 by 20 radius. Give me a little bit of insight as to what some of your research has turned up.
So what we're finding is that individuals are more likely to engage in acts of violence if that's what they've been exposed to. And particularly when we look more deeply at the environment where those individuals are living, oftentimes those individuals are living in areas that are under-resourced. Areas where they have continued to suffer from significant disinvestment from local and even federal government, lack of job opportunities, low education attainment, and again, high levels of poverty. So when this situation occurs, you really have groups of individuals who are left to essentially fend for themselves without hope. And so when you have individuals who are left without hope, that really creates a situation, a dangerous situation. That's exactly what we're seeing across the country. So when we look at where the majority of shootings are occurring, these are in areas that I've just described. So high poverty areas that have suffered from decades of disinvestment. And so it's really important for us to look beyond just the individuals that are conducting the acts of violence, but really look at the environment where these individuals are living that helps facilitate or perpetuate the violence that we're seeing. And so part of the model that Cure Violence implements really allows us to remove the focus from the individual or certain populations. So we try to remove issues related to intersectionality, which helps removing issues related to intersectionality helps us really focus on the root cause of the issue. And so we have a three-pronged approach that we implement at Cure Violence. So one is we aim to interrupt violence. So either stop it before it starts, or in cases where a violent act has occurred, we reach out to those individuals who are the victims or even in the victims' network to prevent retaliation from occurring, because that's also a major issue that occurs across the United States. Retaliation occurs pretty frequently in neighborhoods across the country. And so by engaging those individuals who are the victims and their networks and really de-escalating the situation, we're able to prevent additional acts of violence from occurring. Second, we identify those individuals who are high risk for committing acts of violence. So we identify those individuals who may be have a history of committing acts of violence, but we also don't limit ourselves to just looking at working with those individuals. We also have to be mindful of individuals who are living in our community who may have difficulty just managing the day-to-day stressors of life, right? So those individuals who may have difficulty paying their utility bills, individuals who maybe have difficulty putting food on their table, keeping a roof over their head, paying their car note, obtaining employment. Those can be very difficult situations for individuals. And again, if the individual does not have hope, they're more likely to commit acts of violence. So working with those individuals, enrolling them in our case management program, and then connecting them to the resources that they need is really important. So if an individual needs, rent and mortgage assistance, connecting to organizations that can help them pay those bills. If an individual is food insecure, connecting them to organizations that can help provide food for them and their families. Those things are oftentimes taken for granted by the majority, a lot of people in our population. But again, that can be the tipping point for some individuals to engage in acts of violence. And then the third thing is, we want to change the community norms, change the social norms around violence, the perception of violence. And that is done through consistent and very intentional, culturally sensitive community engagement. We have to make sure we're engaging the community in a way that is meaningful for them. And so we really have to tailor, and that's one of the beautiful things about the Cure Violence model, is that we're able to tailor it to the community based on the community's needs, not based on what we perceive the community to need, right? And so that's one of the challenges with that I've experienced even with the government is, we have what we call Ivy Tower syndrome. So we'll develop programs, initiatives, and provide information on what we think the community need without allowing the community to actually let it inform us about their true needs. And so by working with individuals who are trusted messengers in the community, we're able to obtain that information and again, connect individuals to the resources that they need. And when we think about changing the social norms, we've seen this happen time and time again as well. So those individuals who are high risk, once they start getting connected to the services that they need, they'll start spreading the word to other people in their community. And so then what we'll start seeing is that those individuals who have a lower risk of actually committing acts of violence start taking advantage of the resources that are available in their community. And again, that's just part of the change in the social norm to prevent not only individuals from committing acts of violence, but we want to really change the trajectory of the entire community so that everyone in the community can have an opportunity to thrive.
When we talk about the community, obviously a lot of this is really dealt with community buy-in, because in order to have success, there's got to be this community buy-in. Talk to me about your programs and how you really work to get that community buy-in, so that way you can reach some of these, some of these people who are with the guns, and your violence interrupters can have an opportunity to really land safely.
So community buy-in is extremely important. And we achieve this by making sure that the people that we hire to represent the organization in communities are trusted messengers. So they have credibility in those communities. They're trusted individuals. And by having those individuals engage other people who are laypersons in the community, we're able to have a greater impact, and we're able to get the community to see not only are we investing in individual households, but we're investing in the community at large. And that has really given us a great return on the investment. And so when investing in people is really important. One of the things that we like to highlight is, the individuals who are deemed to be trusted messengers are oftentimes justice involved. And we pride ourselves by being able to give them a fair opportunity as well, because one of the challenges that I saw with working in government was oftentimes we would give individuals who are justice involved what I consider to be token opportunities, meaning that we just checking a box saying that we hired someone who is justice involved. But then we look more closely at that. Most of the times, those job opportunities do not provide livable wages. They do not provide access to mental and behavioral health services or employee benefits, medical and dental benefits. And so you're not really giving them an opportunity to thrive. And so one of the things that we are adamant about is making sure that, we do our very best to, one, remove the stigma associated with individuals who are justice involved. And we do our very best to make sure that they are paid a livable wage, given full benefits, so medical and dental benefits, and that they have access to mental and behavioral health services, so that they can have a true opportunity to have a good quality of life outside of the correctional system.
And when we talk about looking at the community, obviously you have your people who are really boots on the ground. The program is very successful. What do you find to be some of the strengths of what you're doing that's actually reaching people, having an impact, and actually making a difference?
I think the strength in what we're doing really comes from being able to hire the right people. As I mentioned before, a lot of the individuals who are the credible messengers and the trusted messengers in these communities are individuals who are justice involved. And so, again, working to remove stigma and give them a fair chance is really something that we pride ourselves on. But then when we look at the impact that we're having in community, it's really important to make sure that that information is documented. And so one of the things that we do across all of our sites is we have an onboarding program where we train individuals who are doing the work to do data entry. So we need to know the impact that the program is having. So we have a state-of-the-art database that captures over 250 metrics across each of the sites. And this information is being received by us daily, so we can see the impact that the program is having in communities, not only in the United States, but across the world. And as we tell our team, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And so it's really important for us to be able to tell the true story about the impact of the program in communities, as well as advocate for evidence-based violence prevention programs at the local and national level. And the only way we can do that effectively is if we have data. And so data management and data collection and using proper techniques to analyze the data are really important to secure violence global. That's something that we pride ourselves on.
Well, when we talk about data, we know that you mentioned before that data really drives a lot of the success of what's going on. I've often had this conversation when it comes to really interrupting violence. To say that we broke up a fight, broke up a shooting, broke up, something drastic from happening and traumatic within our community. Sometimes those numbers really can't be counted for because it didn't happen, right? So how do you go about getting that message out to let people know, hey, we're successful?
So that's something that we do on a regular basis. So with every site that we have, we provide monthly reports to the sites. And so at least the sites that are utilizing the database, we provide monthly reports to the site. And this shows the hours spent conducting certain activities, the number of interruptions that occur, the number of hours spent helping communities with behavior and social norm change, as well as the number of individuals that are enrolled in case management and connected to resources. So all that information is captured. We also look at the risk vulnerability, do a risk vulnerability assessment where we're looking at the risk of individuals who are being connected into our case management program and monitoring them over time. And so that information is provided back to the local governments and the organizations that are conducting or implementing the cure violence model at the local level.
Share with me a little bit more about your violence interrupters. I know it's a trained program that you have, but these are the credible messengers, as you said, that really have that impact in the community. So share with us a little bit about how you work with them and the impact that they're having on the ground.
So we work really closely with them. So we help local organizations as they're trying to build the staff for their site or the workforce for their sites. We assist them with making sure that the right individuals are hired for the job. And so we know that violence interruption is a dangerous job, and it's a non-traditional job. And so you really need to make sure you're hiring the right individuals. And so we have essentially employment screenings that are done, and our team helps with that. And so we're able to help verify an individual's credibility in community. And so we do that before actually bringing an individual or recommending that an individual be hired at the local level. And this is, again, really important because you hire the wrong person. So you hire someone who does not have credibility in the community, because of the nature of this work, they could really be setting themselves up to get killed. And so we want to make sure that the right individual is hired, and the way we do that is, again, by working really closely with local governments and community-based organizations that are doing the work during the hiring process. So we make sure we adhere to our protocols so that the individuals' credibility can be verified on the front end, so that we can really set the program up for success. Then after the individuals are hired, we onboard them. So for a lot of individuals, this job opportunity would be the first structured job opportunity. So things like data management, timekeeping. Those things can be really relatively new, especially considering that some of the individuals may have just gotten out of jail or prison. They may have spent 20, 30 years in prison or jail. And so we want to make sure we're setting them up for success as well. So we tailor our onboarding process to meet the needs of everyone in the room. So we want, even for those individuals who may have a 6th grade reading level, we want to make sure that they can comprehend what's been asked of them, as well as implement their duties in their scope of work at the greatest level of proficiency possible.
So for you, I know that you have the Violence Interrupters program, but then you also have a program that really deals with at the hospital, because we know that hospital scene can be quite traumatic. Many hospitals, maybe level 1 trauma hospitals, have pretty much induced that there is a lockdown at the hospital, but there are some resources that are available. And I know that you do a good job of really training people of dealing with the hospital. Share with us a little bit about that program.
So the hospital program is very similar to the community-based program, but we utilize the hospital staff to really connect individuals to other services. So connect them to case management, and also if the individuals are violence interrupters that are working in the hospital, they're able to obtain some additional information around the situation that had happened. And then once the individual is released, if they're released from the hospital, we can have proper follow-up when the individual is back out in the community. So we want, so we're able to kind of bridge the gap between the hospital and the community setting. And that's really important, because we know that each system has its own limitation, but when the systems work together to meet the needs of an individual, that really helps the individual recover from the incident that occurred. It also sets them up for success beyond that particular incident.
These incidents happen too far, and I mean, almost too commonly. And when we talk about common incidents, the one thing that I really think about is that there are a lot of families that are impacted, not just on the side of the shooter, but also, well, I should say not on the side of the victim, but the shooter as well. And as a violence interrupter and those who are working with boots on the ground, what kind of resources are available to families of not just the victim, but I want to say also that shooter, because there may be a shooter's family and they may not necessarily be attached to that kind of lifestyle, but yet and still they need services as well.
Right, and that's the beauty of the program. So when we're thinking about connecting individuals to resources, it's not just limited to those individuals who are high risk. It's anyone who needs them. So if you, again, you need mortgage and rental assistance, if you need assistance getting food, if you need assistance with job skills training, assistance with obtaining employment, those resources are available to those individuals as well. The goal of the outreach workers and the violence interrupters is one, to plant the seed that these resources are available, then help individuals get connected to those resources. One of the things that we've worked to do as well with some of the sites is to establish protocols so those individuals who are deemed to have the highest risk of committing an act of violence due to these issues are able to get connected in a more timely manner. And again, that helps us really operate with a sense of urgency to get those individuals connected as soon as possible.
In the future, as we are looking right now to really dealing with gun violence, and we know that there are new gun legislation laws and things of that nature, talk to us about what you're seeing moving forward, because we are seeing stricter gun laws, we are seeing stricter legislations when it comes to these guns, but I've often argued that the ones that are actually committing the crime really aren't paying attention to that. What are they paying attention to in order to be able to make that turn and put the guns down?
I think you're raising a really important point. So when we look at legislation related to guns and gun availability, oftentimes the individuals who are in communities aren't paying attention to that, because that hasn't been a barrier for them. So I think for the law-abiding citizen, a lot of the gun laws can create additional steps for verification to make sure that they are sound and that the purchase of a gun is appropriate, right? But for the black market, those individuals, whether you have strict gun laws or loose gun laws, you're going to have those black market guns in your communities. And that's one of the things that we've seen. So even as the gun laws have gotten stricter, we've seen more and more black market guns in our communities. And so we have to really do a better job of working in community. And I think, as you have, for us to have credible messengers who can engage those individuals who may have those automatic assault rifles and they're only 14 or 13 years of age, that's a problem. But when we have the right people engaging individuals in our community who are high risk, we're able to have an impact that legislation may not be able to achieve.
How are you seeing the impact of gun violence across the United States from your perspective?
We're in a very dire situation right now. Particularly for African-American men, aged 15 to 40, firearm-related violence is the #1 cause of death. And that's something that should not. I think one of the challenges is that we've heard this time and time again. We continue to see African-American and other minority communities disproportionately impacted by gun violence and other types of violence. And so we have to really create the situation, or really create the narrative that this is not normal. And we have to get the communities involved so they can not accept this as normal, right? And so there's a lot of work that we have to do, not only at the local level, but the national level. And I think the stigma that has been attached to certain populations, and then the issues of intersectionality, issues related to systemic racism, continue to plague those communities. And so we have to really do a better job of advocating for Black and brown communities across the United States, and instilling resources in those communities. As I mentioned before, a lot of the communities where you see high levels of gun violence, they are stricken by poverty. They have been the subject of disinvestment for several decades. You have low education attainment, few job opportunities, lack of access to quality health services, and in particular mental and behavioral health services as well. So there's a lot of work that we can do as a system to help improve the outcomes in those communities. But we have to really be adamant about pursuing social and health justice across all platforms. Until that happens, it's going to be a piecemeal process. So one of the things that Cure Violence Global is able to do is work with communities so that they can leverage resources that are already available, so that they can help those communities have a brighter future.
Dr. Echols, share with me a little bit about the United States versus the rest of the world, right? I think we hear a lot of conversation that's had when we talk about what goes on in the United States with gun violence. Our brothers and sisters across the world are looking like, this really isn't a big problem over here. But when we look at the United States, we often are left shaking our heads, because the access to and right to arms is something that a lot of countries really just struggle with, because when you compare the United States to other places around the world, this just doesn't happen.
So it's happening across the world. The Cure Violence Global has sites in other parts of the world. We have sites in Honduras, in Mexico, and Colombia. And every jurisdiction suffers from issues related to gun violence. The context may be a little different. And so that's, again, it's really important to be in tune with what's happening in the community and the community's needs, so that you can connect the community to the resources that they truly need, and not just what we think they need. And so by being able to tailor our program to the particular community where it's being implemented, we're able to have a greater impact. For example, in Camalacon, Honduras, years ago, people were not even comfortable being outside for prolonged periods of time because of the level of violence. But most recently, when we did a visit, they were celebrating youth and having a youth showcase, talent showcase in their community. And that is something that was never done before. But because we were able to meet the needs of the community by working with the community and hiring individuals who were trusted and credible messengers, we were able to see a significant change, not only in the number of incidents of firearm-related violence, but also just the overall ability of a community to come together in a way that's safe for everyone.
So for people who want to be connected to the work, the movement, and how they can go about being a part, give us a little insight as to how one can participate in this.
Yeah, so everyone has a role to play in violence prevention. So, and that can start at the end, within the home, right? And so for parents, we encourage you to start having discussions about what firearm safety looks like, or what firearm safety is for you and your family. It's also important to talk about what firearm safety looks like on a national scale if you have those resources. So having discussions about that within the home is really important. Those are simple. That's a simple thing that individuals can do. Another simple thing that individuals can do is if you have a gun or a firearm in your home, reach out to your local fire department, your local police department, or your local public health department to receive a gun lock so their gun can be properly stored. That's another simple thing. Oftentimes what we're seeing more and more of is young individuals getting access to the guns because they aren't properly stored, and then you have accidental shootings that are resulting in unfortunate loss of life. And so properly storing a gun and making sure it's properly locked is really important. So those are two simple things, but you can also reach out to Cure Violence Global. You can reach out to us online at www.cvg.org. Again, that's www.cvg.org. And then if you want to get connected to us for more information about our program, if you're interested in learning about how to implement our model at your local level, you can reach out to us online as well.
Dr. Fredrick Echols, Cure Violence Global, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut, the one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink, or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking, now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed, better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead, catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo.
Gracias. Thank you.
What's wrong, mijo?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Let's start time for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Pasta dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org. Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, make it into a song.
is everywhere, like here, behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that can be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker hordes.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at SheCanSTEM.com.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Hey, boss. Okay?
I said I'm fine.
Me the babe, see you in the morning. With the first deed, Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
In recent news, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced the launch of Cannabis NYC. It's the first of a kind initiative in sweet services to support the equitable growth of cannabis industry here in New York City. Well, not only will Cannabis NYC boost the city's economy and provide New Yorkers with job opportunities, new job opportunities, I might add, it'll also do so while addressing the harm done to Black and brown communities during the cannabis prohibition. Well, we got a chance to speak with the founder and the president of the Black Institute, Bertha Lewis, justice-impacted applicant, Lovell Lee Jr., and Latino Cannabis Association's co-founder, Jeffrey Garcia, and Vice President Sandra Jáquez to share their insights on this whole discussion.
And we thank you all for joining us for a very healthy discussion. And I think, first of all, I'll start, Jeff. We talked about this before. Here we are again. Give us where we are in terms of equity, because I think that's the question that's really on the hearts and minds of many people. We know that many in the brown community have been criminalized when it comes to cannabis. Now the opportunity for it to be legalized, and also for those in the Black and brown community to be able to reap of in form of business.
Well, thank you so much, Daren, for having us on. And thank you to the rest of my panelists here, Ms. Lewis, Sandra, and one of our applicants in our association, Lovell. So where we are is that now the first card program came out a couple of weeks ago. 36 licenses for conditional retail were handed out, 8 to nonprofits, and 8 to nonprofits and 28 to individuals who were impacted due to the war on drugs, specifically with cannabis specific convictions. And those folks will be the first ones to have legal dispensaries here in the state of New York and in the city of New York.
So, Bertha, let me ask you, talk to me about what your experience is right now, and what are you looking to see happen?
Well, we at the Black Institute have worked on getting cannabis legalized in New York State for decades. Why? Because as our name implies, we are the Black Institute, and so our lens is through social justice and advocacy issues regarding people of color, particularly Black and brown folks. So when we finally last year passed the Marijuana Recreational Use Act, We worked hard to make sure there was a social equity component to that. And I think what is significant about New York State, even though we're in our infancy, is that the social equity component was there in the very beginning. That was the first thing that New York State did, unlike other states who had legalized recreational use before. However, the Black Institute's task is to make sure that we do oversight of New York State's cannabis industry, to make sure that it isn't just in name only or in words that we talk about social equity and making wrongs finally right for those that were disproportionately affected. So not only with collaboration of the Latino Cannabis Association, we will be putting out an annual report. We anticipate it being on 4/20, which is significant for those in the cannabis industry, but we want to do it every year. We understand that New York State is at its infancy, and we want to make sure that we contribute to making it better and better and better. As Jeff said, there were only 36 licenses out of 150 that were issued statewide here in New York City. So we want to make sure that we are getting treated fairly, that we are not being taken advantage of, that people actually get real training and real education about the cannabis industry and about the law here, and what the opportunities as well as some of the pitfalls to avoid as we move forward into 2023 with this, and making sure that our communities that will be impacted so greatly finally can see justice.
Yeah. Lovell, let me bring you into the conversation. I mean, you have the opportunity to be an applicant. Talk to us about, first of all, why you applied and a little bit of your history.
So I'm a triplet, born and raised in the South Bronx by my two parents, Margaret Lee and Lovell Lee. My dad, unfortunately, was incarcerated for 5.5 years. After I was about 17 months, he had to go away and do some time because of the use of cannabis. Having my dad stripped away from us and now seeing how this can become a lucrative industry is part of the reason why we decided to, ultimately apply for a license so that we could reap the benefits of the time lost from my dad, but then to also, repair that void in the community and bring, more awareness that we can legalize marijuana, but also do it in a recreational fashion and also do it appropriately in the community.
Yeah. And so when we look at this right now, we understand that there have been some licenses that have been given. Let's talk about the licenses that have been given and from your perspective, the equity that was involved in the distribution. How do you feel about that?
Like most situations, Black and brown people are always disproportionately given less. So it's no real shocker that only 36 out of 150 were given out statewide. Our only hopes moving forward is that we're brought to the table and given more resources and also a chance, because like many people in New York State and other states, this is something new. This is the new business that a lot of people are trying to capital on, but they may not do it correctly. I think having people like LCA and the Black Institute behind us, we can actually push the narrative that cannabis use can be done recreationally and appropriately in the community, but then also our underserved people like our Black and brown and BIPOC folks can also start reaping the benefits of the things that were once incarcerating us as a mass.
Yeah. Sandra, let me bring you in and talk a little about, from a Latino perspective. Give us your thoughts as to, we talked about how many people got licenses, that disparity in that. What are you looking to see?
Well, like Lovell just mentioned, I myself am I'm an applicant as well. I was also impacted, not personally, but family-wise. So just to see that finally we're going to get a chance, opportunity to participate in an industry that we were so much, punished for. And now we could probably have lucrative businesses in this industry. It's a beginning, it's a start. We still have a lot of work to do. That's one of the reasons why Jeffrey created the LCA, to give us Latinos and our Black and brown folks the opportunity, to participate in this industry that is so minute to us Latinos. I mean, a lot of people don't understand our Black and browns. There's less than 1% of actual businesses that are owned by us. So we need to change that. We need to change the narrative. New York is, trying to do the right thing for people who were impacted, but there's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of education that needs to be done, a lot of awareness, and a lot of advocacy for our people, so we could make sure that we have a seat in the table and that all our, Black and browns do get the opportunity to participate in this industry. That's very lucrative.
Yeah.
Darren,
So,
if I could
yeah,
chime
Jeff,
in
I was going to bring you in. Go ahead.
real
You got
quick,
it.
and if I could just chime in, women in the industry, Black and brown women, are even less than that. So it's very important to make sure that our female entrepreneurs get involved. The Latino Cannabis Association, half of our membership is women. So that was something we were very intentional about. But before I go any further, I just want to be clear. The 36 licenses that were given out, primarily were in New York City. There were some outside the city, but that is only the first round out of the 150. It wasn't that the 150 were given out already. That
Right.
The 150 number is the goal of that initial card program, and only 36 licenses were granted in this first round. So we're expecting another round sometime this month of licenses to go out, and then in the subsequent months, additional ones. And then one other thing that came out at that same time were the rules and regulations that are going to govern the overall program. Those rules and regulations are going to be going through what they call the comments period, right? Where we get to comment and request changes in what the rules and regulations are right now, which we understand there are a lot of things that we want to comment about and see how we can change to make it more equitable for Black and brown folks. And we're going to be submitting comments. We're going to be sitting with Ms. Lewis and other organizations like Frank White and their group and others, right, to figure out and what comments we want to submit to really make this industry more equitable, right? Because one of the biggest things that we find in our communities is looking for funding. Funding is one of the biggest things that we can get, investor funding, to get into these this business. So we're getting ready for that. But I just want to make sure I clarified that and that was clear on the whole licensing.
Oh yeah, and Bertha, let me ask you this: any concern on your part? Because as we saw, as we said, there's more to be handed out. But if you look at the initial numbers right now, some people could say, "Hey, listen, I've really got some serious concerns. Is this going to get any better in terms of disparity?"
Listen, I totally agree with that observation, and people have a right to. We initially, or the Office of Cannabis Management originally said, okay, 150 licenses statewide. But guess what, folks? There were over 1,000 people that applied. So, how many more rounds will we have? How will the rules change from round to round? What about capital? Your application fee was $2,000 just to apply. But as we've all begun to know, as we get into this industry, number one, every minority business person and entrepreneur knows you have to have capital to set this up. How are you going to build out your retail store? What about advertising? What about marketing? What about making sure that you have the accountants that you need in order to make sure that you're within the law, so that, we're anticipating getting all of this tax revenue. But guess what? The initial recreational retailers, they're in competition with the black market already. We have seen smoke shops sprout up like mushrooms, for lack of a better term. Also, let us talk about health and safety. How do we know that the product that you might be consuming doesn't have something else in it? What kind of controls will we have? How will we build the workforce to work in these retail outlets? And also, you know, not every cannabis related business needs to apply for a license. Our people need to know about ancillary businesses, whether it's legal, whether it's graphics and marketing, whether it's accounting, whether it's delivery, whether it's security, you know, or construction for that matter. So, you know, the cannabis industry is vast and wide, and part of what the Black Institute is doing along with the Latino Cannabis Association is, one, we want to make sure that we educate our people. And two, as Jeff said, we want to make these comments about the rules and regulations, while they can be changed, how to make them better. We want to participate with the mayor's New York City Cannabis Roundtable. And we also want to connect with other folks of color. There's a brand new, you know, Asian Cannabis Roundtable that has been forming. You know, there's some Muslims, quiet as it's kept, that have been forming. So we want to form networks with all of our people of color. White people can apply too. We're not anti-white people. We just are pro people of color. So we want to educate. We want to build a network. We also want to do oversight. So as Sandra said, there's a lot of work to be done, but what is exciting, we can actually do this work. Finally, after decades and generations of families suffering like Lovell's family suffered, you know, if we were disproportionately affected, how come we're not getting a disproportionate number of the licenses? Maybe
I think that's the big question that I think that a lot of that I'm asking and I'm raising. And of course, you're not the person I need to raise it to, but we will raise it when we get the opportunity to ask that question. But Sandra, talk to me about this, because there is a great amount of preparation by organizations such as yourself, and you know the work that Bertha is doing in helping people like a Lovell to get to the table, and not just get to the table, but to get across the table. But you know, when you look at this from the initial outset, you're like, okay, got to pay attention to see how this goes. But we can already see, and we already know, as Bertha said, that communities of color have been the ones that have been disproportionately affected.
Right. And that's what we're trying to change. You know, that's what we need to make sure that we are all included in this, because obviously we were the ones mostly impacted. And now we should be the ones, you know, benefiting from this industry that's about to emerge. And that's something that we're advocating in conjunction with, you know, the Black Institute and other institutes and other organizations. How can we get our Black and Browns involved, our minorities, our women? How can we make sure that we are the ones getting awarded these licenses? Because yes, it's wonderful that they started with this 150 card program license, but like Bertha said, 1,000 people applied. 1,000 people applied just for this first round. So imagine how many other people who didn't qualify for this portion of the application, how many other people are waiting in line, like myself, like the Lovells, waiting to try to get this opportunity to get these licenses awarded. You know, how many of us are really going to get these licenses? So we got to make sure that we are in the front line, that we are, you know, working hard in conjunction with the mayor, with the OCM, with everyone, to make sure that our social equity components are the ones that are actually benefiting and getting award these licenses.
Lovell, let me bring you back and put you on the spot a little bit, because when we talk about trying to get ready for things, even with grants, I've heard it from people who've said trying to get a state grant, trying to get state contracts, you know, trying to deal in that kind of area has been an arduous task and sometimes very uphill. What's the process been like for you just to be able to submit your application? Give us a little background as to how hard it was and what you had to do.
Firstly, the paperwork, it's extensive, but it's necessary. I think, just as a overall, working with my dad and having to unpack like all these old traumas of everything that he faced, and then also being reflective on what he faced and how that affected me from his time apart from our family, and then just everything my mom had to do in the absence of raising triplets and an older brother, putting all of that down on paper and just rehashing that story. I feel it's necessary, but to a certain extent, because, a story means everything, especially behind a powerful business. But, just having to rehash all of that hurt and trauma, and then just to see, even with the first round, only 36 people getting it, there are levels to this, and, we're on course to hopefully get our license. But just, understanding that the work was a lot, and some points, they warn me, it can be tedious. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth. You might have to sign this. It may not come back right. You have to do it again. But, overall, just having to relive that hurt and, all that time, and just re-explaining, my dad was taking me from 5.5 years. I was only 1.5, not having him home, having to go make those visits. And then now seeing this become a very large, lucrative business, but then my dad is still at fault, and he can't be as inclusive in this because now he has a federal record. And I feel like even with the people that were directed significantly first and then their family, I feel like there should be, new laws where we could try to help expunge their records, because there should be no reason that a man that was arrested and incarcerated for 5 years can't participate in something that's making multiple millions of dollars, potentially. So I feel like, thinking about what could be done next in connection to the legalization of cannabis, I think the expungement of anyone who had to serve time should, get that time removed so that they could then participate on the legal aspect of this end.
Yeah, Jeff, we've been talking about this. Give me your perspective. This has been the argument that we've been saying for a long period of time, what Lovell raises.
And I think, yeah, exactly, that point that Lovell raised there is that because it's not federally legal and his father had a federal conviction, even though that arrest was here in New York, right, specifically New York City, unfortunately, his arrest did not let him specifically qualify for that first round. Lovell could have, and Lovell will be able to apply in the overall program, right? And I assume his dad will be able to as well. But because there is no federal legalization, that's another barrier. I know that there's a lot of things going on that the Congress wants to try and pass before the year ends. Safe banking, it's another very important topic in this industry that passes, because again, people need to be able to go to a bank and be able to open up a bank account and not just keep money in safes like they do in other states. So these are very, very important. And one of the things that we do here at the Latino Cannabis Association is make sure that we are sitting with legislators, right? We have a full gamut of people working with us. We have cannabis consultants. We have a lobbying firm that works with us. We have attorneys that work with us, right? So we are trying to stay on top of the complete aspect of the industry. Obviously, our main focus is to get our folks ready to submit licenses once that overall program starts after that comment period. But we really need to stay on top of all these other issues that will make the whole program complete. It is very important to get federal legalization done.
So where do we go from here? As we've been looking at this right here, I'll come back to Bertha. Where do we go from here?
Well, the first thing is to connect, okay? We here are at the Black Institute. You can go to our website, theblackinstitute.org. If you don't have access to the internet, call us on the phone, 212-871-6899. And just to do a little bit of a commercial, this is a couple of months out, but Sandra and Jeff and Lovell mentioned his mother. One of the most forgotten people in the cannabis industry are women in cannabis. And so next year, on March the 9th, during Women History Month, the Black Institute, along with other partners, we are sponsoring the first annual Cannabis, where we're going to honor and recognize women in cannabis. So You contact the Latino Cannabis Association. There's a New York Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. The thing is, reach out. We'll reach out to you. Connection is the first thing. We've got to talk to each other, share with each other, make sure that unlike the past, other people are not trying to split us up. We need to come together as one. So contact the cannabis, the Latino Cannabis Association, contact the Black Institute. If you have questions or you just want to vent or you have an idea, we must connect together, especially now that we're coming to the end of the year and 2023 is going to be critical for all of us.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and ask Sandra jumps in here and give me your thoughts before we get ready to wrap up a little bit.
Well, to piggyback on what Bertha said, I totally agree. Women need to be more involved. We need to communicate. We need to come together so we could educate our people. You know, education is key. I'm a big advocate for education, just on the whole process, on the plant itself, on everything that has to do with cannabis. You know, you could reach out to any one of us, latinocannabis.org. You could reach out to the Black Institute, and we are more than welcome to answer any questions, help you on your process of trying to obtain these licenses. And just know that we are here working hard day and night, advocating for everyone, Latino, Browns, minorities, women, to try to get these licenses and make this industry in New York historic. You know, we're trying to make it right, not do what other states are doing. So, you know, let's all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've about out of time, but Lovell, talk to me about your hopes. Optimistic. How do you see things working out in the future?
My one hope is to see my father's time away from us not in vain. And you know, with the connection with the LCA and the Black Institute, I hope that my dad and my family could start to become and be a part of the process of reaping the benefits of a business that everyone else is going to end up reaping the businesses too, especially when a lot of them weren't as significantly impacted as, you know, the ones who are already making profit off this industry. I'm just hopeful that, you know, New York State does it right and, you know, actually takes the comments, the feedback, and ultimately listen to their people, because 9 times out of 10, we know what's best for us because we're living through these conditions. And that's not just with cannabis, that's like on our daily lives. So, you know, just take our comments and our feedback, you know, and take that really to heart so that, you know, moving forward, we won't make the same mistakes as before.
I really thank you guys. I think it's a worthwhile conversation. A conversation will continue to follow, and definitely have to have you all back. We'll update, let people know where we are as the more licenses become available and more things are fleshed out. Definitely want to keep our finger on the pulse. So thank you all for joining us.
Well, we've come to the end of our show today. We hope you enjoyed this week's discussion on the Bronx social justice and anti-violence forums. Now, if you're rewatching, you can rewatch this week's edition with the Recablecast right here on BronxNet TV or BronxNet.org. If you want to join the conversation and present your point of view, well, you can visit our social media pages at BronxNet TV. Join us next week. We'll continue to elevate the conversation, discussion, and bring further awareness to the issues that matter across the globe. I'm your host, Daren Jaime, saying take care. God bless.